In this video, I will talk about protein powders. Do I recommend them when you have health issues, digestive issues in particular? Do I recommend them if you exercise and you want to gain muscle, or if you want to lose weight? If you know me a little bit and you have seen some of my previous videos, you know my position about isolated nutrients. I wrote a long article on the dangers of isolated vitamins, and I talk about it in several videos. The issues with isolated vitamins and minerals is the same for isolated proteins. The problem with isolated nutrients is that they are extracted from their natural matrix, which is the food, in which they are in perfect balance for optimal absorption in our body. The food contains exactly the correct ratios of each nutrient necessary for proper absorption. By isolating nutrients, you will inevitably create imbalances because each nutrient is the cofactor of several other nutrients. For example, for vitamin C, its cofactors are vitamin E, copper, selenium, bioflavonoids, vitamin K, and many others. This means that if you supplement with isolated vitamin C, that is to say ascorbic acid, you will create deficiencies in its cofactors, therefore in vitamin E, in copper, and so on. And if you think that you can rebalance that artificially by taking each cofactor, like vitamin E, for example, you will also have to supplement with vitamin A, which is a cofactor of vitamin E, but you will also have to supplement with vitamin D, that is a cofactor for vitamin E and A. And if you supplement with copper, you will also have to supplement with zinc, with iron, which are its cofactors, and so on. It's endless. And if you think that taking a multivitamin is the solution, just know that there is no chance that each vitamin in a supplement you take will be in the exact ratio that your body needs. Again, for more details, go read my article and watch the videos which links I put in the comments. In short, the logic stays the same with all nutrients, including proteins. Proteins are chains of amino acids. There are 20 amino acids usable by our body. Not all protein sources are equal when it comes to their amino acid profile. Animal proteins are complete proteins. That is to say that they include all the essential amino acids that the body needs in adequate quantities. That's not the case for vegetable proteins. On the other hand, when we consider animal proteins and their amino acids, we must distinguish between the different cuts of the animal. Some cuts will be more or less rich in some amino acids compared to other cuts. The problem of isolated nutrients is therefore not only a problem with artificial supplements, it is already a problem in modern diets, even whole food and unprocessed diets. The supply of animal proteins in our diet comes mainly from the muscles, the muscle meat, whereas in the past, our ancestors ate the whole animal, the muscles, but also the organ meats and the connective tissues, which brought them a perfect balance of amino acids and other nutrients. The modern diet is too rich in the amino acid methionine, which is found in large quantities in muscle cuts, and it is too low in glycine. Glycine is found in large quantities in connective tissues. The modern diet is also low in vitamin A, which is found in large quantities in organ meats and especially in the liver, which is too rarely consumed nowadays. Also, know that too much methionine lowers the levels of vitamin A, glycine, vitamins B12, B6, B9, and choline, which increases homocysteine, an amino acid that is harmful to the body. A diet too rich in lean protein, even if natural, will therefore be a problem. You may have heard of the disease rabbit starvation. This disease affects people who consume exclusively lean meat, which is very low in fat. After a week, they suffer from diarrhea and extreme fatigue, and if their diet does not improve, they can die. Several cases have been reported throughout history with ancient Romans, American Indians, or more recently, some explorers. Their stomachs were full of meat, yet they were starving to death. If people with this disease were rescued, they had an insatiable thirst for fat. They could swallow astronomical quantities of fat without feeling any nausea. What this disease shows is that a diet high in protein but very low in fat makes you malnourished. Why? Because fats contain the fat-soluble vitamins essential to the body that are vitamins A, E, D, and K. Regarding glycine, as I said, animal proteins generally consumed, that is to say eggs and muscle meat, are rich in methionine but low in glycine. Glycine is the primary amino acid in collagen that is found in connective tissues, skin, and cartilage. There are 25 times more glycine than methionine in collagen. Collagen is essential for the health of your tissues and your joints. For a balanced supply of amino acids, it is therefore necessary to consume all the parts of the animal, the muscle meat, but also the collagen. The daily requirement for glycine is 10 to 60 grams according to Chris Masterjohn, who is a scientific nutritionist who regularly writes for the Weston Price Foundation. According to him, it is easier to have a good ratio of glycine to methionine with vegetable proteins, but the problem of vegetable proteins remains that they are deficient in several amino acids. It is also easy to have a good ratio with seafood or with insects compared to meat. When we consume meat, we must therefore make sure that we get this good ratio by consuming both muscles and connective tissues. The easiest way to get it is to drink bone broth or meat stock. They are rich in collagen. I have 2 videos that show how to make bone broth. I put them in the comments under this video. So, what's the correct ratio? Masterjohn advises having an intake of 10 grams of collagen for 100 grams of animal protein. For more details, please read his article. I put the link of his article in my sources under the video. Regarding the problem of a lack of vitamin A intake due to a diet high in lean protein, the body uses vitamin A for the absorption and use of protein from the diet, but it also needs vitamin A to synthesize proteins. Eating proteins without substantial fat intake therefore causes vitamin A deficiency. Several animal studies have shown that liver stores of vitamin A are depleted by high protein dietary intake. In one study, researchers gave vitamin A to rats on either a low protein or a high protein diet, and they found that vitamin A is indeed utilized at a higher rate with a high protein diet. Rats fed diets deficient in vitamin A synthesize protein at a lower rate than rats fed adequate vitamin A. In another study, cultured skeletal muscle cells increase the amount of protein per cell when exposed to vitamin A and D, but not when exposed to vitamin D alone. Vitamin A is key to almost every process in the body, not only for protein synthesis, but also for hormone production, including sex hormones like testosterone and thyroid hormone. Vitamin A is also key to immune system function. It is critical for healthy vision and hearing. It plays a role in bone health, and it works in tandem with vitamin D and K2 for everything from the prevention of heart disease to the production of feel-good chemicals. A diet of lean meat or one that incorporates protein powders is a recipe for hormone disruption, fatigue, depression, bone problems, autoimmune disease, vision and hearing problems, heart disease, and even cancer. And for men who drink tons of protein powders or who even just eat tons of natural but lean proteins like meat or eggs in an effort to gain muscle, just know that what you are doing is counterproductive because by doing so, you lower your testosterone levels. As Chris Masterjohn writes in an article, I quote, "Bodybuilders and other athletes interested in gaining muscle have an interest in boosting their levels of testosterone and other growth factors and maximizing their utilization of proteins and its incorporation into muscle cells. Typical recommendations usually include very high amount of protein, but exclude foods like liver that are high in vitamin A, and low-fat recommendations all but banish vitamin A entirely from the diet by excluding foods such as full-fat milk. The combination of a high-protein diet that depletes vitamin A and a low-fat diet that fails to provide vitamin A is a clear recipe for deficiency in this vital nutrient. Exercises that elicit a high demand for testosterone, such as squats and deadlifts, are often recommended for muscle growth, but without vitamin A, the body cannot meet that demand for testosterone. It's high time for athletes to forget the modern mantras and remember the dietary wisdom of the past, achieving a lean, muscular physique through traditional foods such as liver, egg yolks, full-fat milk, butter from grass-fed cows, and cod liver oil. Experiments with rats show that greater concentrations of vitamin A in the testicles increase basal testosterone secretion as well as transferrin, which is responsible for the transport of iron, and a variety of growth factors. Vitamin A also decreases estrogen production in the male testicles. Rats that are deficient in vitamin A experience decreased testosterone until the accessory sex organ atrophy, indicating that vitamin A not only aids in but is essential to testosterone production. One experiment using guinea pigs, which corroborates the many experiments done with rats, found a decrease in plasma testosterone associated with a deficiency in vitamin A. A human study comparing the dietary intake of 155 pairs of male twins found a correlation between testosterone levels and vitamin A intake. And the most compelling study is one that assigned 102 teenage boys with short stature and delayed puberty into 4 groups: a control group, a testosterone supplemented group, a vitamin A and iron supplemented group, and a group that received both testosterone and a nutritional supplementation. All treatments were effective in inducing growth and puberty, whereas the control group did not gain weight or begin puberty in the same period of time. What is most amazing is that the degree of growth acceleration was similar in the testosterone-treated group and the vitamin A-treated group. Pubertal onset occurred in 9 to 12 months in the testosterone group and by 12 months in the vitamin A group. And also, according to a study to which I put the link in my sources, a diet too rich in protein, that is to say more than 35% of the calories ingested, and low in carbohydrates lowers testosterone levels. So, regarding the question about protein powders, we now understand that consuming animal protein powders such as whey or egg whites, for example, is not a good idea because it induces deficiencies in glycine and vitamin A, which is counterproductive since the deficiency in these nutrients implies a lower synthesis of proteins in the body and a drop in testosterone levels, which itself induces muscle wasting. But that's not all. These protein powders are also harmful because of their quality, which is often bad. Whey protein comes generally from non-organic milk, from cows raised in factories. They never see daylight. They are grain-fed, not grass-fed, and they are supplemented with antibiotics and other chemicals that are then ingested by consumers. And of course, this whey protein comes from pasteurized milk and it is reheated several times at high temperatures during the manufacturing process, which denatures the proteins and make them toxic to the body. I quote a Weston A. Price Foundation article, which I put the link in my sources. Whey is the waste product of the cheese industry. In a complicated process, the liquid whey, separated from pasteurized milk that goes into most cheese manufacture, is put under pressure and forced through a membrane to separate out the proteins from the smaller molecules. This happens at least twice as microfiltration and then ultrafiltration. The pressures used vary from 30 to 100 psi. Does this process damage the whey proteins? According to one internet source, this pressure, although not considered excessive, is enough to change the hydrogen-bonded structure of water and therefore would also disrupt the protein structure. But just in case there is any life in the whey proteins after pasteurization and the filtration process, the resulting liquid is forced out a nozzle at 250 degrees Celsius to produce a powder. The certain result is denaturation of the proteins and oxidation of the tiny particles. Whey can also be powdered through a freeze-drying process, but that is an expensive procedure and few brands of whey powder on the market today are processed in this way. In any event, the whey has already come from pasteurized milk that is toxic. Regarding the toxicity of pasteurized milk, I refer you to my video on milk, which I put the link in the comments. For protein powders made from egg white, it's the same principles. Beyond the problem of excessive lean protein intake inducing a deficiency in glycine and vitamin A, the eggs used for these powders are usually non-organic, from factories where hens never see daylight. They are stressed and fed only bad quality grains and not their natural foods, that is insects and grass. And the manufacturing process also includes excessive heating, which denatures the proteins. As far as plant proteins go, they have a good ratio of glycine to methionine, as we said before, but they are still incomplete in their amino acid profiles. They also contain many anti-nutrients, and they are also heavily contaminated with heavy metals and chemicals such as BPA, hexane residues, and other solvents from the petrochemical industry. Not to mention, they are generally loaded with additives such as artificial colors, preservatives, fillers, sweeteners, etc. Vegetable protein powders, even organic, are much more contaminated with heavy metals and chemicals compared to animal protein powders because of the transformation process, which involves even more processing steps to extract the proteins from plants compared to the animal protein powders. But also because the plants used for these powders naturally concentrate heavy metals, in particular rice, that is generally contaminated with arsenic and lead. I quote again the Western Price Foundation article regarding the soy protein powder process. The manufacture of soy protein isolate is a complicated, high-tech procedure that takes place in chemical factories, not in kitchens. The basic process begins with defetted soybean meals, which is boiled with a caustic alkaline solution to remove the fiber, then washed in an acid solution to precipitate out the protein. The protein curds are then dipped into yet another alkaline solution and finally spray dried at extremely high temperatures. The resulting proteins are invariably denaturated, although some of the very tough proteins like protease inhibitors survive the rough processing treatment. These actually inhibit protein digestion, which may inhibit the digestion of some of the good proteins you are eating. These hardy molecules have been associated with digestive problems, pancreatitis, and even pancreatic cancer. Consisting of 90 to 92% protein, the processing does remove some of the bitter, beany flavors of soy and reduces the levels of complex sugars that cause flatulence. But studies have shown that soy isolates increase the body's requirement for vitamins E, K, D, and B12. Among the minerals, phosphorus is poorly utilized, and calcium, magnesium, manganese, molybdenum, copper, iron, and especially zinc deficiencies appear in animal-fed isolated soy proteins as a primary source of protein in their diet. Soy protein isolates are also more deficient in sulfur-containing amino acids than other soy protein products. What's increased during the production of soy protein isolates are levels of toxins and carcinogens such as lysinoalanines and nitrosamines. Soy is unique among legumes in containing very high levels of isoflavones. These are plant-based estrogens, and they would be concentrated in soy protein isolate. These can block testosterone in men, causing infertility and even breast development. These isoflavones are also responsible for the thyroid-depressing effects of soy products, not just in highly artificial products like soy protein isolate, but also in more traditional ones like tofu. Any plant protein powder will go through a similar manufacturing process, that is separation from the fiber by boiling in caustic alkaline solutions and then spray drying at very high temperatures, leaving the proteins denatured and possibly toxic. And if you happen to find vegetable proteins that are cold extracted, they generally use toxic solvents derived from petroleum for the extraction process, leaving toxic residues in the finished product. Now, regarding hemp protein, which has been very popular lately, a study on anti-nutrients in hemp proteins tells us the presence of condensed tannins, trypsin inhibitors, phytic acid, and saponins in hemp meal may lower the protein available either by precipitating it or inhibiting the digestive enzymes. Phenomena of chelation or complex formation, phytic acid, condensed tannins, and saponins can reduce the absorption of mineral elements and vitamins. The metabolism of some substances contained in flower may lead to the release of toxic products. Moreover, saponins have pronounced hemolytic properties. This means that consuming these powders is useless. The proteins, minerals, and vitamins are very poorly absorbable and they contain toxic substances. Generally, hemp protein powders are made from the whole seeds and therefore include the hull, which is rich in indigestible fiber and anti-nutrients. It is still possible to buy instead shelled hemp seeds, which therefore no longer pose this problem of anti-nutrients, but they are whole seeds and not a powder, so it is not possible to drink them as a shaker. And here again, we have to look into the processing used for the hulling seeds. Do they soak them in chemical baths? Do they use processes involving high temperatures which will oxidize the polyunsaturated fatty acids, making them rancid? There are some brands that sell hulled hemp powder, but it is quite rare. The process used to make the powder necessarily involves high temperatures, which denature the proteins. Also, polyunsaturated fatty acids are oxidized not only because of the high temperature involved in the manufacturing process, but also because the powdering exposes them to oxygen. And then finally, the PDCAAS for hemp seeds, which is a tool used to assess the digestibility of proteins, is only 0.63. Even if this tool is not perfect, it still gives an idea. So, in conclusion, I do not recommend protein powders, whether they come from animal or plant foods. For protein intake, I recommend you to eat real foods and to rely mostly on animal products, since the best sources of proteins are animal proteins because they have a complete amino acid profile and they are easily digestible. And as we have seen, it is important to vary your sources of animal products by varying the cuts consumed. Don't just eat muscle meat. You need to eat the whole animal. Muscles, organ meats, and connective tissues. Eat liver and bone broth often. And if you really want to consume protein powders, then the ones that are the least processed, that are low in methionine and low in heavy metals contamination, are insect powders. Yes, I know it's a hot topic these days, but insects are a good source of protein and they have been consumed by humans since the dawn of times. What you need to look for when you consume insects is the same you need to look for when you consume anything. Where do the insects come from? How are they raised? What are they fed with? Are they fed with toxic chemicals? So that's it for today. I hope this video helps. I put my sources in the description box under this video. I also put interesting videos to watch in the comments. And if you have any comments, if you have any questions, please feel free to write your comments under the video. I see you next video. Bye bye.